And oh, Jane, and you've got the same things that you were using last week for
Okay.
for the links. Great. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you, Jane. This is Career Lab Wednesday. We are here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. Our job is to support you in your career, helping you realize your potential by way of your job. And we invite all levels of questions. Any questions you have regarding your career are welcome, whether you are building a resume in the interview process, if you are looking at new companies, or if you are working on leadership development challenges, if you're working on your relationship with your boss, with your team. All questions are welcome here in Career Lab. So we will be going, we go every Wednesday from noon to 1, and there's a few ways that you can engage. You can jump in directly here on the Zoom line. I love that. That way we get to talk to you directly. If that's not an option for you, if you've got a question that you're not comfortable asking on here, you can always type it into the chat or type it into the comment section and let us know what that question is, and we'll do our best to answer it. So if you are viewing in on YouTube or on LinkedIn Live, you can type your questions into the comment sections there, and we will get to those. So this week's topic is actually building on some of the questions we were getting last week about what do you do with job offers, job offer dilemma. I think one of the things that we've heard over the years is that you might be in a job search for months, and then all of a sudden you get a bunch of offers. And of course that's a good thing, but then the stress becomes a new thing of how to navigate and negotiate that. And so we'll be sharing some about that. I do have I want to check in on Eric, and I also want to welcome Drew Allison, who many of you will recognize, who has been joining in, especially early this year, was on every week, walking us through his process in a big transition in his career. So, we're going to get into the topic. We'll share some stuff about that, but I also want to make sure everybody understands that your questions don't have to do with the topic. Anything career related, whatever's on your heart. No question too small, no question too big. Whatever you're needing help with, bring it in here. This is a very open forum coaching. Part of what you're doing when you're listening in is listening, applying what people are sharing to yourself, even if you don't have the same job position, etc. But we're all here learning and growing together. So there's a way to be learning vicariously. So all that said, I'll circle back on some of this in a little bit, but I would really like to hear, Eric, I know you have been going at it in your company and have had some exciting things recently. Just let us know when you're able to share, because I would love an update on the most recent development from your interviews.
Yeah, I can share. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to share because I've not heard anything back.
Okay. Cool.
There's been other developments job wise, or I guess maybe not job wise, but opportunity wise, but nothing related to this opportunity.
Got it. Is there anything that you want to check in on and get support on, or should we hear from Drew?
No, you can just go to Drew.
Okay. Well, Eric, great having you on, and do, as soon as you know, let me know. Send me an email or give me a call.
Oh yeah, we'll do.
Okay, sweet. Well, Drew, so it has been it's been a little bit since you were last here, and I know you've been developing your practice. I would love to hear from you. You have been in the job search and now business development for a while. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the job offer dilemma. What do you do? How do you make that sort? Because you've really been in that for a while. So I would love to have you share and have people join in that journey.
Yeah, I appreciate George. It's good to be back. For those that haven't watched the previous videos, I leaned on this community a lot when I found out that my position was being eliminated back in December. I ended up leaving that company on February 1st of this year, and I very intentionally engaged in my own job search, using the Career Lab as kind of my home base, my safe haven to come and reflect and to hold myself accountable and to share my story. And so just, living proof that, using communities like this really do work. And, I early on in my job search, I was offered a position as a financial advisor for a major financial firm, and it was going to be, there was going to be a 6-month training program to learn the industry and to get myself set up, and then it was going to be an eat what you kill kind of position. 100% commission, sourcing my own leads, really turning my personal brand into this financial product engine and driver. And when I got that job offer, I was bursting with emotion. The whole job search process is a really interesting place to play with emotional intelligence. At least it was for me, and recognize all the different emotions that are swirling around at each stage. And typically, when I receive a job offer, I'm sure many people out there feel the same way. I feel a combination of fear and joy. There's this joy that I've been accepted, I'm wanted, somebody wants me as part of their culture and their company. But then there's also this fear, kind of the dog that caught the bumper, right? Or the cat that caught its tail. It's like, well, now is this what I want to be doing? Like, is this who I want to become? Is this the life I want to live? And again, probably a lot of people can relate. My job is a huge part of my identity. I've been in sales my entire career. And as a salesperson, I am constantly in that mindset, whether I'm actively selling a product, selling my own brand, my trustworthiness, just connecting with people and building relationships. It's part of who I am. And so, the first reaction I had to that job offer was, all right, I've got an offer. I've got somewhere I can go. I've got something I can do. And then my analytical mind kicks in, and it's like, okay, what are the specifics of this offer? What are the written commitments, and what are sort of the unwritten rules of this company's culture? And that can be hard to figure out. And I found the best way to do that was to ask to speak to people who I'd be working with. This was a financial advisor opportunity. I was like, can I speak to someone who's 6 months into the program? Can I speak to someone who's been here for a year? Can I speak to someone who's been here 5 years? And that was actually a red flag for me. The only person they'd let me talk to was the sales trainer for the region. So somebody who is drinking the Kool-Aid, been around a long time, been very successful, and it was a little worrisome that they didn't have somebody who could speak more to my immediate experience. And that ended up being part of the reason why I declined the offer at the end of the day. And declining that offer brought a whole nother wave of fear. What if I didn't have another offer lined up? It wasn't like I was comparing offers, but I had to trust in myself that I knew what was best. And the way that I did that was through a lot of record keeping in my job search. At the end of the day, I was collecting data on the types of companies I wanted to work for, the way I wanted to live my life. Did I want to travel a lot? Did I want to be in-person networking a lot? Did I want to source my own leads or have leads sourced? Did I want to manage people, manage myself? And these were questions I was answering as I was interviewing for companies and looking at job opportunities. So when the offer came, I could compare the offer to the data I had already collected. And I found that once I did that, and I didn't do it alone, I sat down with a sales coach, a mentor of mine, and said, like, hey, here's the offer. Here's what I'm looking for. And about 15 seconds into opening my mouth, I realized this wasn't the right offer for me. But I was able to overcome the emotional pressure of saying yes to the opportunity because it was there, because I had the data to back up that it wasn't going to be the right call. So it all sort of started by being in this growth mindset, data collection phase of the process, and then being able to use that data later on down the line. So that was one of my direct experiences with a job offer this year. Another quick story that I'm thinking about is a friend of mine who I spent time with last weekend, and she is graduating law school and has had a hard time finding a job in the sector of law that she's interested in, which is environmental law. And she also declined a job that was going to be in a super rural location for real estate law, like the complete opposite of what she wanted. But rejecting that offer for her was a huge emotional risk. She was like, what if I never find another job? What if there isn't something else out there? And she had to put a lot of trust in herself in the process to make that decision and be able to be on her own side for that. And while we were together, literally while we were having breakfast, she got an email from the dream job that she's been looking for, an environmental law job focused on working with Native American populations in the Midwest. She was beyond thrilled. And she got an email saying she'd made it to the second round, and they wanted to fly her out to complete that interview from Boston to Madison, Wisconsin. And she was immediately stricken with panic. She was like, well, I have all these plans next week. Like one of the things about a job search is the unexpectedness of that next interview or that next process, especially if they want you to fly for it. So she suddenly had to kind of restructure her entire week to make it happen. Now, as soon as we talked about the quality of the opportunity, she knew she had to prioritize this above all else. But her initial reaction was, I have all these other plans set up. I can't just, pivot on a dime. And I think we can all kind of relate to that. Like we like our structure, we like our routines, and being in a job search can really mess with that and requires us to be more in a pivot mindset than a steady routine mindset. And by the end of the conversation, she was, more than excited to go and have the second interview, which is happening this week. Really excited, hopefully, to share updates on her behalf, or maybe even get her in here to talk about it in a couple weeks. But the moving along in the job process, each milestone is similar to the emotions that I feel or that she felt when she got, as you would feel when you get an offer. So it's kind of these like little mini offers as you move through the process, and being able to manage the emotions against the data of what is right has been really helpful for me, and it was really helpful for her, as we kind of navigate these experiences. So, George, I'd love to get your bottom line on that. I know I was a bit long-winded.
Oh, no, that is great. Thank you so much, Drew. You're bringing up a lot of great points. I think, an impressive one and something for a lot of people to consider is that, to be aware of that desire to belong, be accepted, also to have income coming in, and that you were really paying attention to yourself, to your plan, to what you wanted. You knew when you first started joining in, you took, a week or two to really get into what is it that I'm looking for? What's the kind of place I want to be? How am I going to create that for myself? And does that come through a company? Does that come through me? How does this all work? And that you took the time and intention to do that, creating a foundation for yourself such that when you're in those interviews that you can spot what you don't want. I mean, that does a lot for your confidence. And let's say that you did talk to a company that you were really interested in, it would have had you be able to be more grounded in the conversation, and to be able to say, I've turned down other offers because this is really something I'm looking at. I do think this is a great win. And that provides a level of confidence for you, which is what a lot of people in the interview process talk about wanting. And, you know, the other, I think the big thing I want to underline is what you were talking about with fear or anxiety, that you used your fear and anxiety to guide you, to highlight what are the things that I care about. And am I going to be giving up my time in a way that I don't want to, or am I going to be, is my fear guiding me towards doing something I'm excited about? And that that distinction is, I think, a really big deal for, you know, you can apply that to any choice in your life. Is what is the anxiety about what's possible and I'm excited? Is this, you know, an anxiety that's going to have me becoming who I want to become? Or is this something where I'm, you know, choosing it out of kind of a scarcity mindset? And, oh, I just have to do this, or I'm not really enough, so the fact that I can just belong here. And sometimes it's fine, you know, but it's everybody's choice. It's everybody's, you know, every individual is going to have their own outcome for this kind of question we're talking about. But if we don't, I want to underline that fear thing, the way that you're using your fear and your anxiety in this. And, you know, I think I was seeing a question coming in from Allie, who was like, what did she want to change her lifestyle that way? Is I think referring to your friend you were talking about, Drew. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I think that's a great, you know, on this of what does my anxiety mean to me? And I'm imagining the anxiety that she was feeling then. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think the anxiety that she was feeling was similar to my anxiety of when I got my offer, in that we spend so much time thinking of dreaming about what we want. We come up with these fantasies and these ideal states and these things, you know, and there's kind of that misnomer that if we get the perfect job, we're instantly going to be happy too, right? And there's almost the pressure of that. And I think when we do get the offer that ticks all of the boxes, appears to tick all the boxes, right? Like one of the things I talk with people about when after they've been in a job for 30 or 60 days is, how is this job different than what you expected? Where did your expectations differ from the reality? And how are you navigating that? Because there's always going to be something different than what you expect. But at the beginning, a job can feel like the absolute perfect fit. And then there's this fear of, you know, is this actually what I want? You know, is this what I wanted, or is this just what I think I wanted? And so it almost gets existential. Like it's kind of like, does this job match the purpose of the purpose I have for myself? And I think that there's an underlying fear of success that comes with that. Like if I'm successful here, then what? Like I've been striving, my identity has been tied to the idea of striving for success.
Whoa.
So if I get this job and I actually reach that level, then what is my identity tied to? And it's a beautiful question to be in, because the reality is, well, then you get to continue to intentionally, you know, evolve yourself. But it's a really scary proposition to actually reach our goals. And I think in the job search, and we're sort of, and when we start getting offers, we're constantly being confronted with this idea of reaching the goals we've been striving so hard to hit. And then it's the reality of actually doing the job and actually, and having to succeed day in and day out and deal with the reality of, everything looks super shiny on the outside, but then you get into it and it's like, well, the IT tech support team isn't as robust as it wants. My CEO isn't as approachable as I thought they were going to be. I don't have time to do continuing education the way that I wanted to. Like there's all these things that start to creep up. It's almost like going from dating someone to moving in with them, and you get to see all the nooks and crannies of their life that was kind of hidden behind the initial parts of the relationship. So I think that's where a lot of her, her anxiety was, is now she's in a position where her dream is about to become a reality. And is it the reality that she wants for herself? And then, there's that, you mentioned trust, George, and scarcity. There's also this kind of underlying, belief: do I deserve to get what I want? And then, being able to say, hell yeah, I do. I absolutely deserve this. I have worked incredibly hard. I'm dealing with that right now. I'm in the process of launching a website for my business, and I have this fear of, well, once I put it out there, that's part of my new identity. I am now Drew Allison, the independent sales consultant and trainer. That's part of everything else that I do, but I can't take it back. So I have to be, mentally and emotionally prepared to make that as part of my reality. And I think that's what my friend was kind of dealing with, and I think what a lot of us deal with as we think about job offers and think about whether or not they're the right fit and we should be accepting them. Obviously, this is compounded with all of the other things, like the responsibilities of the role, the financial compensation, the chance for internal growth, and whatever else that we want to achieve professionally. So it's a very multifaceted anxiety that comes with that.
Wow. Drew, great response to the question of, why are they afraid about that? Because you're bringing up the fear of success. And, I know I certainly, that's a thing for me. And, people talk about imposter syndrome. It's like, oh my gosh, I got this thing.
Yeah.
Can I really let myself have it? Am I really worth it? And, a lot of that, that's me turning my anxiety often into something that isn't that productive. And so learning how to harness that anxiety towards the outcomes. Now, if I actually get the job and I'm there, now how do I use it to really do well, instead of questioning if I am worth it, if I really have the skill set, and because and that's one reason why, one of the key things that we often jump over, because we're so used to going to our heads on things and thinking a lot, is simply engaging with others. And that's, a common thing that people have when they are first getting started in their job search, is they'll do a lot of research and a lot of responding to job ads. But if we don't do a level of engagement that's different than the one we're already doing, we often, don't get the results that we want. And so if I'm going into a new job, learning to engage with what's so and what's there is, really, really important. And I'll figure it out along the way. And if I don't, then, I probably won't last there that long. And so, I think that's a really good point you bring up. So I want to quick room reset. This is Career Lab Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. And we invite all questions, any questions career related. Our job is to support you in becoming who you can become, using your career, your job as your pathway to doing that. And so there's a few ways that you can share. You can join in on the Zoom line. I love that because Drew and I can talk with you directly. If you can't do that, you can always type your questions into the comment section on YouTube or on LinkedIn. And I'm seeing Vern here. Vern, is there anything that you want to check in on?
Nothing new to me.
Okay, great. Well, good to see you. Welcome back. And, good to
Thank you, George.
You bet. So, that being said, you can type your questions into YouTube or into LinkedIn, and we'll do our best to get to those. So, in this, one of the things that I was thinking about, Drew, was how much the job market changes and is changing. You know, and that's just to hold that in kind of to put some context for ourselves. You know, my parents had, my mom had one job and my dad had 3 or 4. And most people that I talk to, by the time they're 30, have had more jobs than my parents had. So there's a way that, you know, things are shifting a lot in the job market, and the skills of being able to work with what's there and is, you know, it's probably only going to increase. And so what you were talking about of being able to talk to people in the companies, if you've got a job offer, you're trying to make a decision, to be able to research into that company as much as possible, talk to as many people, that's a really good thing you're bringing up, Drew. That is such, I think a lot of people might skip over that and not realize that it's if they take the lead on that they're really helping the company, even if they were to choose that they don't go there, that they're, you know, it's ultimately a good thing. They are taking authorship of their career success. And I wanted to scoot back and circle that in from what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, that's a great catch. I mean, you're bringing up all of the skills that we need to develop in the current job market that past generations haven't had to deal with as much. You know, being able to communicate the transferable nature of what we learned in one industry and how it'll apply in the next industry. You know, as we make a move in these jobs, assessing companies from a standpoint that if I'm here for 5 years, 4 years, 6 years, that's a huge that would be a huge win in terms of stability. But that's not necessarily the goal for everybody anymore. You know, some people see being in a job for 2 years as something successful, or, you know, whatever the personal goal is. But it is whatever the time frame for a successful tenure is, being able to, as accurately as possible, understand the culture that you're walking into if you accept that job, I think is a really important skill set. And we're, you know, one of the benefits, you know, back in the day. So one of the old sales adages is, you know, pre-internet, it was buyer beware, right? Like, you know, the salesperson knew more than you and they were going to swindle you out of your money, and good luck holding on to your paycheck. Post-internet, it is seller beware. And this comes from Dan Pink as a site, but seller beware basically being the seller most likely knows more than the buyer because of all the data that's available online, and the buyer knows more than the seller. So the salesperson role is no longer to educate or be the gatekeepers of information. They're really helping people make the decision that's right for them. We could say the same thing about the job search. It used to be that data about companies was so closely protected, we just had to take a guess of whether or not we thought the culture would be good. But with things like, especially LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and sites like that to a degree, but I always take those with the biggest grain of salt I could possibly find, like a full chip off of the salt block, because you just, you know, you're only getting one side of the story there. But LinkedIn gives us a window, and social media in general, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you know, depending on the company you're interviewing with, the way they present themselves online can be a really accurate window into their priorities as a company. So if I'm looking at a company that has somewhat of an online presence, but it's not really consistent or creative, that tells me that that's not a priority for them. And if I'm somebody who wants to have a really strong online brand and have a lot of creative freedom and support for collateral and images and copy, I probably won't get it from this company because they're not prioritizing it for themselves. Why would they, you know, sort of, in order to prioritize it for me, I'd have to make one heck of a case, you know, to, you know, for the, you know, resource allotment, you know, time, energy, attention, as well as finances. to get that's the sort of resources. So it's kind of looking at the data behind the data that is more readily visible. So the candidate now has as much information as the company, whereas in the past we didn't have, we were kind of going in blind. Now it's not necessarily a 1-for-1, but I think you kind of understand where I'm going here. And it's and being able to use LinkedIn and other social media to really learn about a company, I think is really vital. Also, industry journals, if it's a publicly traded company, looking at, the publicly available, finances and summaries and everything that has to, that sort of research. Like you said, George, it is something that people don't think about at all. In a lot of cases, they think about the one role they're applying for and whether that's a good fit, but researching the company overall is huge. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's really apt at digital marketing and digital media, and she was saying how she will find individual employees from these companies and look at their social media and see, like, are they celebrating the company culture on their own LinkedIn, or are they going as far to celebrate the company culture on their Instagram, on their private stuff, like, on their more private stuff. If I was looking to join a team and I was able to see that team lead, that like members of that team were celebrating, a sales contest win on their personal socials, that says a lot. That really means something to the culture of the company. And it can be a little intimidating if you're not used to sleuthing online. But I can tell you from experience, because that was not really a skill set of mine up until 6 months ago. Practice makes perfect. Just go and just dig in and start searching around and clicking on things. You'll be amazed what's out there and what you can find. And it's now become second nature, where if I have a conversation with somebody or I'm looking to, I look at their LinkedIn very thoroughly. And depending on the who they are and what the context is, I'll try to find them in other social medias as well, just to get a better sense. Because I'll tell you what, that's what everybody else is doing. So if you're not doing it, you're going in with less data than everybody else. And that's just kind of the reality, I think, of where we're going in terms of publicly available information. So that's kind of my hot take on what you're throwing out there.
This is fantastic. You just hit so much that I had not thought of, considered, and I'm like, you could do a course on what you just said. I mean, to be thinking about companies from how people in the company are showing up online is something I had not thought about. So I think that's a really big deal, what you just tapped into there. Thank you. Oh my goodness. We have some questions coming in, but there's stuff I want to explore in what you just shared. So we might have to do that. We might have to have you back in a month, Drew, and go a little deeper on that. I mean, that's a really big deal. And whatever your system is that you used to track the companies and conversations, I mean, maybe everybody comes up with their own, but it might be really helpful for people to hear about how you did that, and what systems you put in place for that. Because that, as I'm listening to you, my anxiety is like, oh, it's too much information, I can't hold it all, so that I can pay attention to that anxiety and say, okay, so how would I use how would I keep track of that much data as I'm going in and researching companies and people involved there? I think that is that's really cool. So thank you, Drew.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm excited about some of these questions in the chat too.
Yes. So we've got from Michael Ross, what's the best way to transition from one job title to others? Michael, if you are available to jump in on the Zoom link to talk a little bit more, that would be fantastic. And if not, you can keep typing your questions into there as we get going here. But best way to transition from one job title to others. I don't, Drew, I'm just going to throw that to you. What's your response to Michael's question? from that sentence?
Yeah, I'm thinking about at least three different ways I can interpret the question. So I'm going to
Okay.
go with the one that I think that I think is correct, which is you're in a job, you're in a position, and you want to move up the ladder, and you want more responsibility. You want to move into a new title with more money, more responsibility, more access to the big conversations happening at the company. You want to be involved, in shaping the company more so than you are now. Using that version of the question, there are a lot of ways that I have done two things. One, started doing the job that I want before I'm being prompted. If I want to do something, I start doing it in whatever little way that I can. So a perfect example of that, when I got into the insurance industry, I was an individual contributor. I was a producer that wrote my own business for a year, loved it, had a great time, but wanted more. I get a lot out of educating, training, coaching, developing, helping folks move from A to B. And so as we grew as a team and hired new people, I took it upon myself to show folks the ropes, to take them beyond their initial onboarding and to help them out and to let them know that they had somebody internally that they could go to. And then I made a point to make sure my bosses were aware that I was doing that. And I knew that I was going to be happier and more fulfilled in a managerial type role than just as a producer. So I started doing little things that showed what I could do, that proved that I had the skills, I had the experience, and I wasn't afraid to brag about it and talk about it in my one-on-ones, or in other, when it was appropriate. And it was really interesting. I actually, one of my coworkers at the time, he noticed I started doing this, and he was like, "Drew, why are you doing this? You're not getting paid for it. We're 100% commission. You're focusing on this, and you're losing sales." And he was like, he was all concerned for me. And I was like, "Rob, I totally appreciate that, but I've got a bigger plan. I've got a bigger idea of what I want to do." And it got to a point where he and I were equally successful on two different paths. He was one of the top performers in the company. I was managing and developing the team, and we had a great relationship, and we were both doing what we wanted to do. So it was finding the responsibilities within our roles that made us the most happy and the most financially successful, and really leaning into it. So that's one. So one is starting to do the job before I'm being asked to do it and showing them what I'm capable of. The other is the fastest way I have found to get promoted is to find and train the person that's going to come up behind me. And because I can't tell you how many times I've been in a conversation with somebody who wants to be promoted. And the problem is, if George is on my sales team and George wants to manage people, but George is bringing in, $100,000 a month, it's like, well, George, if I take you off the sales team and put you in a management role, where's my 100,000 going to come from? And that's just the reality of business, right? Like there's a bottom line, there's a efficiency. I had an old manager that used to say aces in their places. There were times when we would where we were able to cross train across roles. This was at a restaurant, so we got to learn different stations. But as soon as the power hours of the restaurant started, 11:45 for lunch, 6 o'clock for dinner, it was aces in their places. You go to that role that you do best and you knock it out, and you can cross train at another time. If I want to be promoted, I find the people who can do my job and I start helping them develop the skills to do it. And I make that claim when I'm doing the internal interview. I say, listen, I understand what I'm leaving behind. Here are the people that I think can cover for it. Here's what they need to learn. Here's how I'll show them. And I kind of go above and beyond in solving the problem for my boss, as opposed to assuming my boss is going to solve the problem for himself. Because that's it. If you want to get promoted, the reality is it's more work for your boss to then to shuffle the pack and shift things around. So if you can find that solution for them, it just makes the decision a whole heck of a lot easier to promote you. And if you don't do that, and I've fallen into this trap. I have a friend who's falling into this trap in the media industry right now. You end up getting the promotion, the money, the title, but you still get stuck doing your old job. because there's no one to backfill. And they're like, hey, it's going to be short term. Do your old job, start doing your new job. Short term turns into 2 years, and you end up doing 80 hours of work. So those are the two. If we're interpreting the question that way, those are the two things that I focus on when I want to move from one job title to the next.
Okay, I want to hear the other two things though too, but that is fantastic. Laying it out that way, the reality of the situation and the loss that the boss has when I get promoted. And so if I can take ownership of that, that's fantastic. And I want to say plug for you, Michael, to check back on some of what Eric Mira was sharing in the past career labs. They're all posted on YouTube. You can check them out there because he's been taking us through that process of how to move up internally. So there's some resources there for you. Drew, I do want to get to Allison's question too. Do you actually, let's jump to hers and then come back to what the other possibilities might be.
That sounds great. Yeah. It looks like one of her questions, fairly straightforward. Can you talk about cover letters and how important they are or not? Is it an outdated concept? I have a very visceral reaction to cover letters. I hate them. I find them frustrating. And the reason I find it frustrating for jobs is a high volume activity. So if I am stopping to write a cover letter for every job, it slows me down. I don't have the efficiency that I want, and it just frustrates the heck out of me. That being said, we don't get to make the rules of the game. The people who have the jobs and who are offering the jobs, they set the rules. And in so many instances, they use a cover letter to weed out people who are genuinely interested versus those that are just mass applying to jobs and haven't even really looked at the job description and don't even know if this is the right fit for them. So it's a litmus test for your interest in that position. So when I was applying for jobs at the height of my search, I was applying for 5 jobs a day, 25 jobs a week, and I used it as my own litmus test. If I read the job description and was excited to write the cover letter to draw connections between the description and my experience, then I would write it. And you get to a point too where you have maybe 5 different cover letter templates, 3 different templates, and you can really plug and play much easier, and it becomes a little more straightforward. Chat GPT wasn't a thing 6 months ago, at least not to what it is now. I'm sure that could probably help as well, or at least help get things started. But if I saw that a cover letter was recommended, not even required, and I thought, forget it, I'm not interested in that, I would put the job aside. I would still save it. I'd save it in my spreadsheet as a possibility, give myself a chance to maybe come around to it, but I would not apply for it then. I'd skip it. And so unfortunately, it is one of those necessary evils, especially right now when so many people are applying for jobs. Instead of seeing it as something like I tend to do as a burden, it's a gift. It's an opportunity to set yourself apart. And it may be worth looking at keywords in your industry that should be included in cover letters for the automation that reads those cover letters and helps push resumes through. Because part of it is optimizing the algorithm, and that's a reality of it as well. And I would say just look into your industry and make sure you're including keywords and phrases that help identify you as a qualified candidate.
That is awesome, Drew. And I'm just seeing Allison's comment, definitely using Chat GPT to draft a standard cover letter for a role I didn't care much about, but then spend 2 to 3 hours on a custom one. Okay, that for a role that you're really interested in.
Yeah, and what's cool about 2 to 3 hours, that's a lot. It's definitely a time commitment. Applying for jobs is a job in and of itself. So if you're spending 5 hours a day applying for jobs or whatever, and one day is spent crafting that cover letter, that's a beautiful experience. And I bet that the other thing that's really helpful for me when I write a cover letter that I'm excited about is it ends up becoming an outline for my interview. It gives me talking points that I can use in the interview, and that helps ease my stress going into those conversations. So it's all part of the larger project of building rapport with these folks.
That's a really good point you bring up, Drew. And that's something that I've worked with people on their resumes where they are, just want to get the resume done. But to say no, like if I was preparing to play a show with my band, I would be rehearsing with the band and really getting through the parts and understanding it so that like I can really enjoy the performance. And so if I could use a cover letter that way, it's like, okay, I am authoring, the song of me. I am authoring like literally who I am in this world and understanding myself in this, writing is an abstract thing to do. And so I'm developing new parts of myself literally while I'm creating this cover letter. And that's really going to serve me not only in the interview, but just for knowing who I am and where I'm at. So I think that's
100%.
a beautiful reframe, because when I first look at that, I'm like, I don't want to do a freaking cover letter. Thank you for helping me reframe it, Drew.
Nobody does. Yeah, it's the same. Like nobody wants to do dials in sales, but we all know that there's no pipeline without dials. And so it's figuring out those other ways that it can serve you, where that activity can be of service. And and I love that Allison's leaning into the technology and ChatGPT. That's all part of it. No matter the industry, no matter whether you're sales, ops, marketing, accounting, there was a time when every job became a job that required the use of a computer, right? Like, and now it's every job is required, some foundational knowledge of how to use artificial intelligence. And I'm terrified of it. I'm also I side with the writers with the writer's strike happening in Hollywood. Like I can write better than this. Like I don't need this tool. But the reality is, if I don't understand it and I can't talk intelligently about it, somebody who has the same writing skills as I have, but has the knowledge of that, is gonna win out over me every time. Like so keeping up with the tech, and I love that Allison's leaning in on that, and I think her next question too is similar in terms of kind of LinkedIn priorities. So she mentions asking about the how key it is to be internally referred for a position. Should I connect to a third level connection on LinkedIn to internally refer me to a tech company, even though we've never met, or who can actually vouch for me? I am a big fan of try anything you can to build rapport with people at the company that you want to work for. That strategy feels very much like a needle in a haystack. It would take a lot for somebody, like if somebody reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm applying at this company, at your company, I'm really excited about it. It would take a lot for me to want to refer them. And I'd probably want to have a conversation first, and I'd want to get to know them a little bit. And I may or may not have time for that. My biggest advice is to really dig into your second contacts and find people who are in the industry potentially, and then have conversations with them. Take the time to get to know people, ask them questions about what they're doing, why they love what they're doing, share your story, share what you're hoping to get out of the next phase in your career, and ask them if there's anybody in their network that they know who'd be a great person to talk to. I did a lot of this basically from January to March of this year. And as opposed to honing in on one company where I was trying to get an internal referral, I focused on getting an internal referral from people in my network to wherever they thought would be a good fit, and really trusting the process, trusting that some conversations are going to be useless. Some are going to be a ton of fun, but have no professional value, but they're still great. And there's a huge value to that. And the success will come. The success will come at the end when you look back and say, okay, what did my efforts get me? One of the best pieces of advice I got when I knew I wanted to open my own consulting and training firm was ditch the hourly rate and go for a retainer. Have your clients put you on a retainer and model your business that way for a whole host of reasons, as opposed to an hourly rate. I love this advice. I am like over the moon about this. There's so many reasons why I'm really excited to offer myself on a retainer basis as opposed to hourly. The way that I got that piece of advice was, it was like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It was like I talked to, and these are real people. I talked to Eric, who introduced me to Corey, who introduced me to David. It took 3 conversations, and Eric is in real estate marketing. Corey is in IT sales and logistics, and David is an independent sales contractor and sales trainer, somebody that I really am emulating myself after. I didn't know that's where those conversations were going to go. And I had plenty of conversations that sort of had dead end endings. Again, from a lead referral basis, from a personal connection basis, they were amazing. And I can't wait to continue those relationships in my network. But that one example, that happened 3 times in my search. That same, where it took 3 or 4 conversations to get to a nugget of advice or an introduction or something of really high value. And I led through relationships as opposed to trying to find one person within that company. If you really have your heart set on a specific company, try to draft a little LinkedIn message about, hey, I'm looking to work here. I would love to learn more about the culture, and maybe just have a 10-minute conversation, and send it to every employee you can find on LinkedIn. Just copy and paste, change the name, and just blast that company with your name and your excitement. And law of large numbers, somebody's bound to get back to you. And if not, it's okay. It's a hard gambit, but it's definitely worth the shot, because it's not going to take a whole lot of time. You just have to deal with the rejection if nobody gets back to you. But that's a whole nother conversation.
So good, Drew. So good. Thank you. Allison, I hope that helps. That's really useful to hear. What I want to bring up, what you said about asking your network what they see for you. I mean, how many people wouldn't think to do that? And would think, I have to know what it is that I want. I'm supposed to know, because my whole life, everybody's always been asking, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? Like this kind of thing. And so I'm supposed to have it all figured out. And oh no, I'm in a job search. And it could be so easy for me to think I have to do this alone, and think I have to, come up with the silver bullet. But what you just shared about tapping your network, asking people, what do you see for me? Where would you want me to be at? I think that is so great. And then the levels of connection, you're inviting people to share in your success. You're really inviting people to share in your development, in your journey. And I thought that's beautiful. So I wanted to make sure. That's really,
I appreciate you highlighting that. Yeah, I agree.
so cool. So wanted to underline for everybody who can't see this chat, so we're in several places, is Allison says one of the best things she's done with the open time is learn about AI. So you say that and I'm like, well, I will probably start listening to some podcasts or doing my ancillary research on AI, because I just had the thought of, anytime technology and new technology is coming in, humanity, we're always resistant to it, because it disrupts. When TV was first introduced, when the radio was first introduced, there's always a sense of, oh no, there's something wrong with this. Or what are the implications of that? And I think asking the questions, what are the implications, is probably a really good idea, because technology really does change how things work. And your point, Drew, of, learning to work with new technology is part of, being successful, is part of living my best life, because the world is always changing. And back to what we were talking about, I don't know, 40 minutes ago, is that the job market is changing significantly and rapidly, and that's probably only going to continue.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I've done a fair amount of hiring and interviewing, being on the other side of the table, especially for roles that are 100% remote, that require a lot of computer literacy, the ability to move quickly between programs, to do simple troubleshooting, and I was confronted with not a lot, but I had a couple candidates that accused me of ageism, of saying, like, hey, just because I'm over 50 doesn't mean like I should be rejected for this job. And it was something HR ended up handling kind of on the whole side. But one of the things that I really look for when I'm hiring, and I'm starting to kind of see it now that I've got gray in my whiskers too, I'm starting to feel it on my side, but the having a growth mindset, showing that you're willing to learn new things that you didn't know yesterday, because more often than not, I'm interviewing people who may not have a whole history in the industry that we're in, but they have a lot of transferable skills and the ability to not even the ability, the willingness to learn new things is really is at the backbone of that. And being able to show people that you're willing to learn new things and be outside your comfort zone. And so many people, it amazes me how many people are willing to say, I'm not interested in that. I don't need it. It's not, I was successful without it. Why do I need it now? And it's kind of arrogance like that usually caused me to pass on a lot of candidates. And that is not an age thing either. That is all across the board. People kind of have that standoffishness. And I think it comes down to another thing we were talking about 40 minutes ago, which is, fear, fear of, am I going to learn this well? Am I going to be proficient at it? Is it something I can understand? But we talk a lot about the job market in this space and, in Career Lab. And I think having a growth mindset towards new technology is one of those foundational things that you can do for yourself to separate you from others that are unwilling to do it. One of my favorite quotes is, do what others won't so you can get what others can't. It was a group fitness instructor used to yell that in my ear in class, and it made me laugh every time. Actually comes from a football player whose name's escaping me right now, but if you search it, you'll find him right away. But that's I think is a great mindset for me when I think about earning new contracts, accepting new job offers, getting myself out there. There's so many things that people are unwilling to do, and they'll never be able to get where you are based on your will to try something new.
That's fantastic, Drew. Thank you for joining in today. And this has been a juicy, meaty topic. We've got to wrap. We're coming up to the end of the hour here. But I would love to have you back in a bit. And some of this stuff that we're talking about, we haven't dug into the social and emotional intelligence stuff as much as we sometimes do. You can always refer back to last week's session. We went in deep on that. But also, let's share a link to a video about emotional intelligence. You're welcome to view this, learning how to use all of our resources, what I do have here, and the ability to say, okay, am I unwilling to do something, to learn something new because I'm afraid that I can't do it and I don't want to confront that fear? And what are the costs to me about that? And how can I ease into my fear? What are some ways that I can do that? And so I hope the video that we'll share there can get you started with that. It really is learning social and emotional intelligence skills, learning about me and the resources I have with my emotions is key for the changing job market and changes in the world. To be able to flex and flow has a lot to do with my emotional intelligence. So that's really something well, we're obviously not going to get into today because we got to jump, but you can do your own research on that and come back next week, ask questions about that as well. We are here to support you in your job, in your career, in your development. So again, Drew, thank you so much. Really great seeing you and
Great to be here.
having your expertise, your experience being shared here. Really great stuff. Well, thank you. And thank you
Thanks,
everybody
George.
for your questions. Really appreciate those. It's vulnerable stuff. Asking here where everybody can see and listen in. So really appreciate all of you as well. All right, take care.
Thanks, everybody.